Hey everybody, John McClain here. Thank you so much for tuning in. On this episode, what I'm going to be discussing are different techniques to do dry fire drills with, or different kind of ideas when you're doing dry fire drills to make it a little bit more dynamic. Because again, that's kind of what our sport is. It's a dynamic sport, right? So we've discussed the draw and we've discussed the reloads. Now, the draws and the reloads that we talked about in the previous episodes were all done standing still, okay? And a lot of the times you're not going to see that in a lot of matches, okay? Where you will see them are for classifier stages or standard stages. But other than that, we always have field courses, right? And when you have a field course that involves movement, which is another episode that I'm going to be covering later, you want to still practice the way you're going to play. Rarely ever are we always going to have stages that start with us standing completely still, locked in a box, and having to engage targets from only that position, and then having to do a mandatory reload from only that position, and then engaging the rest of the targets. So because of that, when we're doing dry fire, this is our opportunity to really kind of expand on what it is that we're going to be expecting to see when we go to these a lot of these major matches, or even your local match. Okay, so the first thing I want to discuss is drawing the gun. Now, on top of we've already done draws from hands relaxed and then wrist above shoulders, right? We've talked about doing those repetitions of just when you're first getting warmed up for the night, just doing a couple, 1, 2, making sure we've got good solid grip on the gun, doing a few reps of those, and then doing a few reps with our wrist above shoulders, making sure we get our hand on the gun exactly how we want it to be several times before we start to progress on through the night, okay? The next thing I want to discuss is awkward starting positions. It's not always going to be hands relaxed, and it's not always going to be wrist above shoulders. A lot of times they're going to have where your hands have to start behind your back, your hands have to start flat against your earmuffs, hands have to start with your fingers interlaced behind your head, maybe holding a weird prop or something like that, or even hands on the wall, right? Hands on X's on the wall or something like that. So when you're doing your dry fire, be sure that you practice some of those starting positions, because it does change the angles of your body, and it makes more movement to get your hand to the gun. And again, anytime we add movement, we're also adding time. So if your draw is a consistent 1.2, and now we have to add an awkward position or an awkward starting position, now we're behind the clock already, because we have to do an extra step before we actually get to step 1, which is gripping the gun. Okay, so be sure that you try out some of those different shooting positions, So I mean, I got my part timer set for 1.2 here, and that's not an extremely fast draw. And I'm not trying to go for fast right here. I'm just trying to go for nice and consistent, so that I don't look like an idiot on video when I don't make the time. But for the sake of argument, we're gonna do hands relaxed, wrist above shoulders. We'll do one rep of each of those. Okay, so we've done those. Now we'll do some awkward positions. Let's do fingers interlaced behind our head. So you can see I've already lost maybe like another 1/10 of a second just by having to unlock my fingers, which are a little sticky right now, from sweat, perverts. Just from having this added movement, because the other aspect is that my hands are now behind my gun, whereas typically I start with them pretty much right on top of the gun, so I can drop my hand straight down when I'm wrist above shoulders. Well, once I have to put them behind my head, now I'm adding that movement of bringing my hand forward a little bit coming down on top of it, so that I can establish my grip. So you've added another step, another process, something like that you have to do to accomplish your mission of getting your gun out and drawing it and firing your first shot. Okay, so the other aspect that we want to do is drawing the gun while just doing a simple turn. A lot of times they have us starting, square down range, facing completely down range, hands relaxed or wrist above or whatever it is that they're going to do. But the first move that you're going to do is either turning to the left or turning to the right, because that's where your first target is. Okay, so what we want to practice also when we're doing our dry fire drills is turning both left and right. Okay. So again, it is a different step, or it's an added step that we're adding to the draw, which is just shifting our body and moving it towards the direction of the first target that we're going to have to engage. Okay. Now, in a later video, again, we're going to talk about movement, and one of the things I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about is anytime I have an opportunity to draw my gun while I'm moving, you're going to see me do it. Rarely ever will I stand and shoot a target that's staring me in the face, especially if I'm going to be coming back and I'm going to pass that target again. But again, we're going to discuss that on a different episode. So, there we've got the draw. Again, we're just making it a little bit more dynamic. Add some movement to it. Even if it's a simple step forward to get the gun up and break your shot, it's still adding some sort of dynamic side to the draw. Okay, so the draw's done for now. Next thing I want to talk about are the reloads. Now, there are, I have to set this timer up real quick. There are different aspects that comes to your reloads that I want you to take into consideration. Okay, and that is that if you were to do the absolute perfect reload for your skill level, whatever the time may be, okay, that time should still be pretty much consistent whether or not you're standing still or if you're taking a step. Okay, and the reason I want to say that is because when you're standing still and you break your last shot, and then you go into a reload, and then you break your next shot, the reload is dead time. You're not actively engaging any targets. You're not accomplishing a second mission other than the one mission that you're doing, which is getting your reload. So if you have an opportunity to reload while you're moving, then you should. And you should be able to get it done in your whatever your consistent time is. So we're not talking about the 100% here. Okay, we're not talking about going 100% and every now and then going 101 and having a flub and a mess up. We're talking about doing it correctly. So if your absolute fastest that you can do is a 1.1 or a 1.2 reload, okay, that's the absolute fastest. Then when it comes to your drills, give yourself a little leeway. Maybe make it a 1.5, okay? And the reason I want to discuss that aspect real quick is just a lot of times, if you set up drills, you want to be doing something, right? So you're either working on consistency or you're working on speed. And if you're working on consistency, then speed is still going to be there, but it's not at the forefront of your mind. That's not what you're focusing on. You're working on consistency, okay? So a consistent 1.5 reload, if that's your skill level, if you're consistent at 1.5 and you're happy with that, and all the people you compete against are doing like 1.5s, then you need to work on consistency and eventually, you know, that time will begin to decrease as your skill level builds. But don't try and push yourself too much if you're working on consistency. If you're working on speed, then what you want to do is maybe not do 100%, maybe do like 90%. So if a 1.2 is your fastest reload you can do, then give yourself like a 1.3, okay? And now you've added some stress, or not 1.2. 1.2. If that was your 100%, you want to go to like maybe like 1.3 to add that little bit of stress that, okay, I'm trying to go for the fast, and then see what it feels like when you lose control, because I can guarantee you, and especially when I do it, I can't stay at 95 or 90% a lot of the times, especially when I make a mental error or I have an actual mistake, a physical mistake. I don't get a mag into a gun or something like that, then my brain will automatically, without me wanting it to, will sometimes go, uh-oh, we're behind the clock, now we got to speed up, we got to make up time somewhere else, which results in us going to 101, 102%, and more mistakes are made, and everything just begins to snowball from there. So when it comes to your reload, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out, I got to get my laundry basket here because I have downstairs neighbors that don't like hearing my mags hit the ground all night long. Okay, so we've gotten into the fact that when we're talking about reloads, we want to get into our consistent phase. We want to figure out what's consistent for us. What is it that we can always do 100% of the time without making mistakes, or at least huge mistakes that are going to cost us dearly, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do, I've got my single stack rig on now. So instead of only having to do 1 or 2 reloads when I'm shooting my high cap 9mm for 3-gun, is I'm going to have to do 4 or 5. The other thing I want to practice, because I'm going to single stack nationals, is grabbing mags that are around my back. Okay, whenever I'm shooting 3-gun, all my mags are always straight down and straight up. Not a whole lot of movement here, but when I have to come all the way to the back of my rig here to grab that last mag, that's added movement, and it's an awkward movement because I have to lean a little bit forward to make sure I'm not grabbing my shirt or anything like that, and then getting the mag back up to the front of me and having it indexed correctly to insert into the gun. Okay, so for the sake of this portion, what we're going to do is we're going to find out what our consistent is. Okay, we're going to figure out what is it that we can do to do 5 reloads with my single stack and come in under some sort of part time. So the part time that I have set for right now is 9 seconds. That's also going to include a draw. So here we go. Okay, so 9 seconds, not too bad, and a lot of those loads went pretty smooth there. This thing stinks about shooting single stacks. You have to put all these things back in there all the time. All right, so 9 seconds, not too bad. 5 reloads, everything went fairly smooth. At no point did I really feel super rushed or, oh my gosh, I'm behind the clock or anything like that. So that's the standing reload. Where are we going to see those? We're going to see those in classifiers and standards. Where are we not going to see those? We're not going to see those in field courses. The only time you're doing a standing reload is if everything went terribly wrong, which has happened for me at times. And I'm having to do a reload because I run out of bullets or round count gets messed up or something like that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do in order to make the dry fire practice a little bit more dynamic is we want to add some sort of movement, because we're not very rarely are we just standing still and doing reloads. We're going to be doing some sort of movement, even if it's just a step. If it's just engaging targets on the left and you're doing a reload as you step right to get into your next port, that's still a form of movement. And if you don't practice reloading your gun while your body's actively moving, then when it comes time to perform that skill, you're not really going to be able to perform it up to the par that you'd like it to be. Okay? So, for this drill, what I'm doing, I'm still just going to be standing still. Just for the sake of it, again, I have to aim at my laundry basket here on the floor. Is on the draw, I'm going to shoot ahead of me. I'm going to reload and index to my left, reload, index all the way to my right. So I'm kind of doing almost like a 90 degree-ish transition, okay? And we still want to work, again, on establishing a good solid grip after we've completed our reload, getting a good sight picture, and doing a dry press. Obviously, the first trigger press is going to drop our hammer, okay? But each time we do that, we want to put the finger on the trigger, do the dry press. Reload, put the finger on the trigger, do the dry press, okay? Now, the other thing that I want you to realize about this drill is we're going off of whatever par time it is that you set. So for the sake of this video, I'm doing 9 seconds. Even though you're adding this movement of transitioning the gun 90 degrees, you should still be able to come in under that time. Okay? Your reload time should be consistent, no matter what you're doing. So this movement is dead time. There is nothing going on there. You're not actively shooting a target. You're not actively engaging anything. And for the sake of this drill, we're not moving. So the time that it takes for us to drop our mag out, pull the new one out, get it inserted the gun, meet and greet, present to the target, while we're indexing to one target over and over, should be the exact same as turning and engaging and presenting towards multiple targets here. So let's see if I can actually practice what I preach here. We still got 9 seconds. Helps if I cock the hammer back. Let's try that again. Definitely not the cleanest. Okay, so as you can tell on that run, wasn't exactly the cleanest that I wanted it to be. I still came in under my time of 9 seconds, which might be a little bit of a, I might have a little bit of cushion for me. But again, I'm working on consistency, not speed right now. Now the thing I want you to take notice of that is that even though I still came in under the time, which means I could potentially lower my part time right now, is that even though my first couple of reloads didn't go exactly as I wanted them to do, They weren't as smooth as I would have liked them to be. I had one little hitch up. What I want you to notice is that at no time after I made those mistakes did I get excessively faster trying to make up that time. If you have the drill set up properly for you, and you have your part time set up consistently for your time, if you do it right, okay, and you make a mistake, understand that you're behind the clock at that point. You can't catch up, because if you did it absolutely perfect right, your time would be 9 seconds in this case. If you did it absolutely right, 9 seconds is your time. If you have a 0.2 of a second mistake, you should be 9.20 when you finish your drill. You are 0.2 of a second behind. Do the rest of it absolutely correctly at your consistent level, and understand that you're going to be behind the clock, and be okay with it. Because a lot of times when you make that small mistake that results in 0.2 of a second being lost, our brain will automatically go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you messed that up. Now we got to try and find some time somewhere else. And we start getting faster on the trigger. We start rushing movements and overrunning positions, or we end up flubbing the next reload even worse. So instead of being only 0.2 of a second behind and then backing down and getting back into our consistent level, and then only being 0.2 of a second behind when the timer goes off again, we add 0.2 of a second mistake here, we try and rush to fix it, and we result in making another mistake which costs another 0.2 of a second. And now we're 0.4 of a second behind. And now we really try and rush. And then we do this terrible bag grab, and nothing's lined up, and the mag completely hits the frame and slides up your hand, and you have to catch it with your body and pick it back up and put it in. Okay, you just lost a second. All because you were trying to catch up to 0.2. So understand and be okay with the fact that if you make a mistake during your drill, you're going to end up behind the clock. But don't rush. Be comfortable with the fact that I'm going to be behind now, but I want to do the rest of the drill correctly. Okay? So, we still have 9 seconds right now. We're going to try and do that drill one more time. We're going to try and do it a little bit more clean. And since I had some extra time, means I probably was going a little faster than I should have. So let's see if I can bring everything down just a little bit to get into my 80% where I do it right every time. Okay, so what you noticed in that last drill was that I still came in under my time, but it wasn't as smooth as I could have been, which means my time probably could come down a little bit more. But again, I'm trying to go for consistency and not speed. The fact that I came in under my time means I went a little faster. I was probably pushing like 95 or something like that. But okay, so what I want you to notice about that run that I just did is that I still came in under my time, even though I had a few mistakes. Now, when I had my mistakes, at no point afterwards did you really see me speed everything up. I didn't start slapping the gun out and just snapping the trigger and not getting a good sight picture. I didn't start ripping mags out and hoping that I got lucky. I stayed mostly in control, and I did the rest of the drill correctly. What you need to understand about this drill is if you have your part-time set up correctly, so let's just say, for the sake of argument right now, we're going to say 9 seconds. 9 seconds is what it takes for you to draw your gun out of the holster, do a good dry fire, and then proceed to do 5 good, solid, in-control reloads, nice and clean. It was 9 seconds. If you mess up your first reload, and let's say it costs you to go 0.3 of a second behind, okay? So it's a 0.3 of a second mistake. If you do the rest of your drill correctly, you are going to be 0.3 of a second behind. Understand that and be okay with it. Because if you try and rush to catch up that 0.3 of a second that you already lost, it can result in you going to your 100% and then your 101 and your 102, where you end up dropping mags, or your mag hits the frame of the gun and slides in your hand and you've got to catch it with your body. I mean, we've all done those reloads before, including me. And a lot of the times when those happen, it's because our body and our mind has started to say, crap, we're behind the clock because we made a mistake. Let's speed up and try and catch up. Not what you want to do, okay? Understand that if you mess up during this drill, you are not going to finish it within your par time, and be okay with that. This is also a great drill for you to do when you're doing live fire. Okay? Understand that your last shot is going to break after your allotted time, but be okay with that, because the last thing you need to do is go into rush freak panic mode and turn a 0.3 of a second behind the drill into a 1.6 seconds, because in the process of trying to catch up, you threw another bad reload, now you lost another 0.3, and now you really try and rush, and then you end up having a catastrophic reload that results in a second. That's not what we want to do. We're working on consistency. If you make a mistake, accept the mistake, see what you did, visualize it in your head. What is it that I did wrong? Did I not grab the mag correctly? Did I not index the gun where I needed it to be? Did I not look at my mag well? Whatever it is the mistake that you did, process it for a split second, correct it, and do the rest of the drill correctly. So, still got my par time set for 9 seconds here, and we're going to give it another shot and see if I can even come in more under the time, and just show you again the consistency. Okay. So, like I said, doing that at your consistent level, which means I could probably bring my par time down to 8 now. That's how you want it to be. At no point do you want your head to start getting involved, especially for this drill. What you tend to find is after your first like 2 or 3 reloads go good, you're like, shoot, I'm awesome. Yeah, I'm so awesome. I'm going to drill this next, and there goes the mag. Now I got to patch a hole in the drywall because it went flying at 60 miles an hour because I tried to, pull some sort of spectacular reload or something like that. Be okay with the fact that during this drill, if you make a mistake, you're going to end up behind the clock. All right, so in that last drill, what we had was a static lower body and a dynamic upper body. Now, we went from the first drill, which was performing the reloads, just standing still and re-engaging one single target. In the second drill, we've added a 90-degree transition while we're doing the reload. And what did we find out? We found out that our times can still be exactly the same because of the dead time. I'm not actively shooting the gun. I'm not presenting the gun to a target. So in that time, if I can move, whether or not it's just by transitioning the gun or physically moving my body, then I should. Because during that dead time, there's nothing else for me to do. If I can accomplish the second mission while I'm reloading the gun, then I should. Now, when it comes to this movement drill, what I want you to realize is that I'm not talking about an 8 feet movement, 12 feet movement, or something like that. I'm talking about maybe like a decent sized cross step or something like that, okay? That's all we need for the sake of this drill. So, because we're doing just one big cross step, in that amount of time, the majority of people out there should be able to get your reload done, however fast you move. Now, the other thing that we're talking about is our consistency. So if I was able to consistently reload my gun and do a 90-degree transition, then I should be able to do one step and get into my position by the time I get my reload done, which means my par time should still be the same, okay? So for the sake of this video, we've got it 9 seconds. Let's see if we can make it happen. Okay, so movement. All right, we've already proved that a 90-degree transition is doable under the par time. And there, I just proved that I can move, let's see, I'm terrible at math, so let me figure this out real quick. 3, 6, 9, 12, what was about 12 feet of movement in the same amount of time that it took for me just to transition the gun 90 degrees back and forth 5 times, and in the same amount of time it took me to index to one target, perform a reload, index to one target, perform a reload. So again, we've proven that the reload is dead time, your draw is dead time as well, which is why if you can draw and move, you should be. Because in that amount of time, shooting one target over and over was the exact same as me shooting one target and then moving 4 feet doing a reload, or 3 feet, shooting a target, moving 3 feet again, shooting a target, moving 3 feet again, shooting a target, moving 3 feet again. I'm able to cover 12 to 15 yards in the same amount of time that it takes for me to engage only one target. Okay, so we've added some more movement to it, and again, movement is what we do in our sport. So if you can accomplish 2 missions at once, then you should be. Now, let's talk about if something were to go terribly awry. So you've gotten to your port, you have 8 shots you need to do, you have 8 plus 1 in your gun, and in the process you end up making 2 mental errors, bad trigger presses, whatever it is it's going to be. So now you get into a point where you need to be doing a standing reload. Well, we've already discussed, if you can do 2 missions at once, then do it. So does that mean you should really be doing a standing reload? Probably not. If it ever comes to that kind of point for me, I'll do some sort of movement. Even if it's just like moving a half a foot forward or something like that during my reload, because again, it's dead time. So instead of being back here, if I can be up here, still make my last shot or my makeup shots that I need to, and then progress through the stage the rest of the way, I'm trying to take a little bit from what I'm losing. But again, I'm not speeding everything up and trying to catch up. I'm not going to sit there and try and do the best reload of my life to try and catch up to that time. I'm going to stay consistent, and I'm going to try and work through the situation that I've put myself in as best as I can, which means I'm going to calm down, get my consistency back, and I'm going to do some sort of movement to start me going in the direction that I still have to end up at. I still have to end up in the last position, shooting the last target. So in that kind of event, if I have to do a standing reload, rarely ever will you see me stand and reload. I will do some sort of shuffle. I'll do some sort of move to try and progress myself throughout the stage. Okay? So there we go. We've talked about the draw, and we talked about adding some dynamic to the draws, changing your shooting or your start position, and then adding some movement when you draw. We've talked about doing the reload and how to get your par time set up in order to perform the drill, or to perform the next 2 drills, which was doing just the transitions and then doing some movement. So that's all for this episode right now. I'm going to have plenty of more things to add on to it. Trust me, I love hearing myself talk, apparently. So I hope you guys found this stuff video. Make sure you go out and practice. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid of making errors. Don't be afraid of making yourself or looking like a fool to yourself. If you have a Dryfire buddy, hey, little heckling does a lot of good in this sport, which you'll find out as you become better friends with some of the shooters out there. The wait time, you'll find, is not very long from the moment you make a mistake and then you finish your stage to the heckling that then begins from all of your shooting buddies. So again, hope you found this video somewhat informative. If you didn't, sorry I wasted your time for a 3rd time, but in the meantime, practice hard, shoot straight. I'll see you guys on the range.